Okay. Well, here we are. Well, hello, everybody. My name is Dan. I'm sitting next to the very lovely Matilda, and sitting across from the equally lovely Dr. Lee.
Hello.
That's Dr. Lee, and we are keeping him a secret for the time being for many reasons. But thanks for everybody for logging in.
Don't forget, we have another guest
You're
tonight.
completely right, and I apologize. Right back over there. We could have said that was Dr. Lee.
That's right.
That would have been a good. That would have been funny. Yeah, but we're in Seabury Treadwells. We're on the second floor. This is the first time we ventured up to the second floor for the show, in the spirit of science. And we are on the second floor in Seabury Treadwell's bedroom, the master of the house, Seabury, and we have a representation of Seabury. I'm touching his hair right there. Laying in the bed. Now there's a great
deathbed.
His deathbed. He died in that bed.
Not just sleeping.
He died on March 7th, 1865.
Mhm.
And I was born exactly 100 years to the day later.
Wow.
I was born on March 7th.
That's crazy.
Isn't that cool? I'm 38 years old. But we have a noisy street outside. But yes, we're in Seabury's room, what's known as Seabury's room, on the second floor on the street side on East 4th Street. Now there's a great sort of romantic rumor that Gertrude was born and then passed away in this bed. I know that she used this room after her dad had passed on, and while she was an older woman, she stayed in this room, and it is believed that she passed away right in that bed. Now, everything in this room, if we could have our cameraman do a pan and tilt, everything in this room is original to the house. So everything, the bed that Seabury is laying in is the bed that he slept in, and his armoire over there, his desk where he did writing, and his business over in the corner. Everything is as it should be here, as Papa would have liked it. Well, so we're very fortunate to be here. Thank you, sir. And you can keep it on Matilda. She's much prettier than I am. So here we are, and hey everybody, we haven't been here in a little bit over a month from the last show. Well, it's coming up to the busy week next week. It's our busy season. Yeah. So we have lots of announcements. Matilda is going to read the announcements before we get going here.
Yeah, well, first of all, this deathbed scene is part of a special exhibit that we've got going on this month, Death and Mourning in the 19th Century. So if you visit the house, you will see on the parlor floor, we have a wake set up. We have a mourning dress from the Treadwell collection on view in the dining room. And here in Seabury's bedroom, we have the deathbed scene. And a special event that we're doing on Sunday, Step Back in Time, the 1865 death and wake of Seabury Treadwell. We're going to have members of the Treadwell family will be here. Actually, it's volunteers who are going to be portraying the members of the Treadwell family, but maybe they'll be here.
We're all family at the Merchants House.
Right. And so we'll be greeting guests, and we'll be talking about the preparations for the funeral. You'll be able to ask any questions, take photos of yourself, and we also encourage you to come in 19th century mourning attire. This is included with the regular admission, and the last entry will be at 4:30. The candlelit ghost tours next week, which are the most popular events that we have here, are sold out. But if you want to get on the wait list, you can go to the website and put your name down to get on the wait list. Halloween night itself, we don't have a ghost tour, but we have the Chant Macabre, Songs from the Crypt, Halloween concert with the Bond Street Utopian Singing Society.
What does that mean, utopian?
I'm not sure what it means, actually. But they are the resident singing group of the Merchants House. And they will be doing a Halloween concert of haunting 19th century vocal music. The concert is live in person at the house, and it will also be live streamed. You can get tickets on the website, merchantshouse.org.
And I came to one of those. I haven't taken any tours.
Mm-hmm.
I'm giving some tours next week, and
I'm
But
on a tour with you,
you?
actually. The
Nice.
Thursday night tour
All right,
will be
cool.
Dan and me, the 10:30 tour.
All
It
right.
is sold out, but you can join the wait list if you want to.
Was it up
So,
before? No,
Hmm?
no, never mind.
Should they show up to that in
Yeah.
garb too?
oh, always. Yeah,
That would
definitely.
be cool. Yeah, they're fun. They're fun. We've had people like run out. We've had a
Faint.
girl get sick right in there.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun.
If
So
you're
come.
into that kind of
Yeah, that's
thing,
it.
but I think you probably all are since you're
And,
here watching us right now. Sorry.
And as always, all the money that is spent here on the tours and any kind of donations goes directly to the house. Nobody here, we're all volunteers, nobody gets paid. Everything goes to the house. And right now the house, and I've talked about this every time we do the show, because it's so important. Right now the house is in a battle literally for its life with some developers who are wishing to put up a hotel right next to the merchant's house. If you're looking at the merchant's house, there's a park on the right, and then there's a garage on the left where Rafiki carts in New York, as you know what a Rafiki cart is, where they store all the food trucks. And they want to take that down and put up a hotel, which would just devastate the merchant's house. The merchant's house has had contractors in and engineers, and they've all concluded that any kind of construction going on so close would just, the inside of the merchant's house would just crumble. And like we said, everything here is original. The crown molding, the plaster crown molding would just turn to dust and land on the floor. We don't want that to happen. This is a jewel in the oyster. This is the pearl in the oyster of New York City, and we've really got to do what we can to protect it. It needs protecting, and if you lose places like this, if you lose the merchant's house, you're losing part of New York. And who wants another gaudy, trashy downtown Lower East Side hotel anyway?
Yeah.
Come crash with me. I'll let you stay at my place if you need a place to stay in New York City. Lee as well. Lee, as many people as you want can stay at Lee's place. Great.
Well, you know what, Dan, I get a lot of questions. People are like, they don't really understand, since this house is landmarked, how this could be. And unfortunately, in New York City, when a structure is landmarked, you can't do anything to the structure, but that does not extend beyond the boundaries of the
Right.
structure, which is why, unfortunately, we haven't been able to just put the kibosh on this whole thing from day one.
Could use a kibosh word. And from what I understand, the hotel would like butt right up against the merchant's house.
Yeah.
You know, this house was built in 1832. The Treadwells moved in 1835, and we're here. You know, the last member, Gertrude, passed away here in 1933, I believe. So it's just been one family here, and it would be a sin. It would be a sin to let that happen. So I'm not going to go on and on and on, because I'll go on and on at the end of the show. But really, anything anybody can do, and we're not asking for something for nothing either. Come take a tour. Come during the day and see the house, and take a self-guided walking tour up and down the stairs, and really see what we're talking about here. Right? You have to do it. You have to do it. So and all that money will go to put that kibosh on this hotel next door. So okay, so before we get started talking about our favorite hauntings, there is a question and answer tab, and there's also a chat tab. So if anybody has a question, a comment, or something they would like to let us know and let all of you know, just type it in there. And if somebody, Jenny is saying hi, the ghost tours are awesome. Hi, Jenny, and we miss you. And if somebody wants to type in there, let us know that everything is working. That would be fantastic. So let's move on to our favorite ghost stories.
Yes.
I'm not going to put you on the spot, Matilda. I've got lots of stuff all queued up. But have you had any kind of, first off, have you had any experiences here at the house yet? You volunteer at the house.
I do volunteer at the house. I want to say yes, but I haven't seen anything, but I've heard a lot of things. I've heard doors slamming, I've heard footsteps, I've heard rustling. Sometimes I will just get a feeling that I'm not alone. If I'm downstairs on the parlor floor by myself, all of a sudden I might feel a little like I'm not alone or that I'm being watched. And I have said this before, many people have experiences in these bedrooms. This is not where I feel things. For me, it's downstairs in the kitchen is where I really
In the kitchen.
feel
Interesting.
most, I sense things mostly here in the house, but
And just recently, on a tour, on a private ghost tour, I believe, there's a lot of action seems to be happening at the
Mhm.
Merchant's House lately. So anybody coming on the tours next week, you're going to be walking into a freshly active house.
yeah.
I'm just getting the story now, but did you want to explain maybe?
Well,
going
I
on?
wasn't actually on the tour, but I was told that on this tour, someone saw a face in the mirror, this mirror here in Seabury's
Oh, yeah?
bedroom, right behind me between the two windows. This has happened before, but always in the other bedroom, in Eliza's bedroom. The person was so disturbed that they had to leave the house. And on that same tour, 2 people reported that they were touched by not a living person near them. Let's put it that way.
Like on the shoulder.
Yeah, on the
butt,
shoulder, on the arm, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
So, but that's consistent. That's happened before.
Yeah.
That has happened before on the ghost tours.
Yeah, but like Dan said, it's fun and interesting that it's happening now, In
Yeah.
other words, like, yeah, it seems, and actually, a lot of stuff seems in the last maybe 4 months, its activity seems to kind of be picking up, which is interesting.
Yeah, with the Merchant's House, it is interesting that, I have gone, when I first started coming here, which was 2007, so a while ago, every time we came here, something happened. And we were picking up EVP, which stands for electronic voice phenomena. I'm going to play quite a few of these that I've captured here at the Merchant's House a little bit later on. It has slowed down as the decade and plus has moved on.
I wonder why.
Yeah,
What do you think?
I don't know. I don't know if it's that, and this is just my opinion. When we're talking about spirit, when we're talking about ghosts, we're talking about people
Right.
without a body. We're talking about consciousness that has survived bodily death. And just imagine how frustrating it is to have somebody not pay attention to you for a long, long time. And suddenly, people are now paying attention to you and they're asking you questions and they're trying to engage with you. And I think there was a lot of excitement and it was new. Now I try and bring a medium in every time I come to the Merchant's House to do sort of a formal investigation. And they have all, to a person, all the people that I think are worth bringing in, have said that the Treadwells and the servants are most of the spirits that have been haunting. It sounds like a negative word, but they've been checking in with the Merchant's House, and they know what we're doing. They understand what we're doing because we explain when we're here, and they understand and they appreciate.
Right.
And they love that we're interested in the house, and they love that the house is in such great condition, and they love the people, and they always, they think the first time we did a seance here, one of the things they wanted to get across was, and it was one of the servants, it was Annie McNulty or Bridget Murphy, I forget, and they wanted to thank the people that work here at the museum for
that's so
taking such good
sweet.
care of the house and the
Yeah.
clothes. They brought up the clothes that are, the collection is up in the servants' quarters. So, a pretty remarkable things going on here. But I just think the family and the servants got used to us. And they're people. They're not circus ponies. They're not gonna perform on command.
Right.
So maybe we're here on a night that, they have other things to do and other places that they choose to be. They have their own free will, and maybe they're not into coming to the house. And summers are notoriously slow here, and I think it's because the Treadwells weren't here in the summer.
That's such a good
They
point.
went
Yeah.
somewhere else, so maybe
Yeah.
they're down the shore in Jersey and enjoying themselves there. Lee, have you ever? I'm sorry, Lee, hold that. Have you ever had any experiences outside of the Merchant's House?
So I had a
It's
very
favorite haunts. It doesn't have to
Yeah.
be the Merchant's House.
I had an experience one time where I had been away for the weekend and I got home, and this was back in the day when you still had a landline
Mhm.
and you had voicemail on the landline and caller ID. And I received a call from my old childhood number,
Mhm.
which
Wow.
my parents had given up when they had left the city, which I thought was very strange because I lived in a different apartment. I had a different number. I don't know if someone had been assigned that number. I don't know how they would have called me or found me because we were unlisted. So I called the number back and it said that the number was out of service and had been out of service since my parents had left the city.
Wow.
And there was my husband, who's a sound engineer, actually analyzed. There was a message that was left, and there were some voices in the background. It was kind of unclear what they were saying, but it was definitely like I want to call it a like a blip in time where two worlds kind of collided. So that's the most concrete thing that's ever happened to me.
Cool. Well, Lee, you've spent
Stuff actually similar to that's actually happened to me too.
Oh, yeah.
Actually, in the run up to doing research at the merchant's house. So I made like I wanted to kind of, get in contact with people that had hauntings, whatever, like you said, maybe not the best term, but yeah, presence of spirits or whatever. So I set up like a website and I, tried to advertise like a ghost hotline, like, hey, contact this number if something interesting happens.
Huh.
And just out of the blue, somebody calls me up and they sounded like a little confused, but I was like, who is this? And they're like, oh, Spirit, I'm returning a call. Like, Spirit, somebody named like Spirit or something told me to call back at this number. I'm like, I don't know what you're talking about. This is and they called the ghost hotline number that I'd set up, which wasn't my personal number. It was just like a random number I set up through Google phone or
Voice.
whatever.
Wow,
Google Voice.
that's kind of weird.
Yeah, it was really weird. Yeah, and they seemed confused, and I was like, "No, sorry, I didn't call." And they're like, "Oh,
Spirit
okay."
told them to call?
Yeah. They
That's
said
really
something-
weird.
Yeah, and then they hung up and didn't call back.
Mhm.
Yeah, kind of weird.
I had a few years ago, after shortly after my dad passed away, I got a phone call. I was home and my phone rang and it said unknown number or private number or whatever, one of those ones that you screen out.
Yeah.
And so I screened it out. And I don't even I rarely check my messages, and I check them sometimes. You have 100 messages, and but I checked this one, and damn it, if it didn't sound like my dad,
Mm.
and it just said, "Hey, Daddy," and he had a stroke, so he had a different sound to his voice than he normally had, and it unsettled me.
Yeah.
Like
It sounded like him?
it sounded exactly like him. And then I played it for my mom. Now, if I played it for somebody who was friends with him, they wouldn't recognize it because they didn't know what he sounded like after the
Right,
stroke.
right.
And it sounded like post-stroke dad. He used to talk strokeese. He used to say, "I speak strokeese now." And it sounded just like him. And when I played it for my mom and my sister, they both got upset. And they were like, "Oh my God, that was him." And I have it. I saved it somewhere. But I for the life of me, I cannot find it. It's on one of my digital, devices. And pretty remarkable. Now, and I've heard that often, that I have another friend who I won't mention, but his daughter had passed away, and they had when they came back from identifying the body, there was a message on their answering machine, and this is going back years when you had the little cassette tapes.
Yeah.
And he was able to, he had the resources and the connections to send that to to a digital forensic analyst who works for the government. And they were able to do a voice analyzation between, video they had of his daughter, from birthday parties, and the voices matched. And they got those messages for months after she had passed.
Wow.
And they all matched up. They were all, and he wasn't sure if it was somebody playing a joke, a terrible joke, one of her friends. She was in high school when she passed away.
And this is before cell phones, so the phone number wasn't recorded that it came from? Or?
Right. It was, on the old fashioned, this is, early 90s.
Yeah.
but they had them for 3 months, and then one of the last messages was like, "Oh, I'm okay now," and you know, I love
Wow.
you, and basically saying
God.
goodbye. And
Wow.
yeah, crazy.
Um,
Hey, I've got a couple of people. Margaret said the first time she visited the house, she was in the kitchen by herself, and a feeling of fear washed over her, and she ran up the stairs where her brother was checking her coat. And you know, she was petrified here. She said she'd been wandering the streets of Manhattan for days, and you know, here she was in this beautiful house. Why
The
was she
kitchen,
afraid?
the
Yeah,
kitchen.
the kitchen's creepy. I
I'm
I
telling
caught
you.
some stuff in the kitchen. We'll play it later. And then an anonymous attendee said, when my husband and I were at a tour here at the house years ago, he heard the name Sarah whispered to him, almost like a disembodied voice while we were walking down the stairs. We could not account for the voice anywhere, and my husband was not aware that there was a history of a woman named Sarah in the home. We asked an employee, and they confirmed that there was, in fact, a Sarah. Has anyone else heard something similar? Well, anonymous attendee, I'm going to play you something pretty cool. And then Jenny, who has moved, Jenny, and but she was a volunteer at the house.
Well, she worked here too.
Oh, and she worked here. Okay, all right. And she said she had been touched by her mom while she was meditating the same day she passed away. And that's nice, Jenny. You're part of a pretty exclusive club. But to our anonymous attendee, I am going to play, and I hope you guys can hear it. I caught an EVP say the name Sarah.
Really?
Sarah. I'm going to play it. Let's see. I'm just going to play it. You'll hear me. I had a girl named Sarah on the investigation, and I was introducing everybody on the investigation to the house, and I said, "The beautiful Sarah," and we hear what sounds like a man's voice say it right after that. Let's play it.
I don't know if I've read this one yet.
Hear that little
Yeah,
whisper
yeah,
back there?
yeah.
And then I boosted it up by 10 dBs, 10 decibels. Yeah, it's, and I'm glad we're starting with that one because that's like a class C EVP, where A being the best. But I manipulate a lot of these so we can hear them better. But yeah, we got an EVP that sounds like Sarah. And you know, let me know if you guys could hear that well. And otherwise, I will just share my screen. You might be able to hear it a little bit better. Okay, so I guess Lee, growing up, did you have any experiences?
No,
No?
zero. I mean, just some interesting experiences since being here. You know, at one point we were having an event and we were singing together, and while we were singing, you know, I was actually leaning over the table, like reading the lyrics, and I felt and I saw, like out of the corner of my eye, somebody standing right next to me, almost like looking over my shoulder at the lyrics and singing along. And I was so, you know, it was such a weird feeling. I really jolted out of my seat and like looked to the side, and it, you know, it was really interesting. Like I don't, you know, usually have that kind of thing. I've never had that before in my life, but that was pretty interesting.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the first time I came here, well, the first experience we had here was hearing footsteps, and I'll play those as well. We were doing an investigation. There was just 4 of us in the house, and it was towards the end of the evening, and we were, all 4 of us were down in the front and rear parlor, and we're just sitting around the floor and just sort of shot. And we had recorders set up here, and we heard footsteps come out of Mrs. Treadwell's room, which is right across from where we are, and walk out of the room and walk down the hallway and come into here, into Seabury's room. Now, just for reference, this is the front door I'm pointing at to Seabury's room, Mr. Treadwell's room. So the footsteps came right in here, and we had recorders in both rooms, and we picked up the footsteps moving, and all 4 of us heard it. We all looked at each other like, wow, you know, I mean, and it's strange when an event happens. It's been my experience that sometimes they're so subtle and they're so run-of-the-mill and everyday occurrences that we deal with all the time that we almost filter that out. And we were just all talking, and we went, oh, wait a minute. there's footsteps walking, people are walking back and forth.
Uh-huh.
And then the recorders picked up almost what sounds like whispers and voices. It's not us,
Yeah.
obviously. It wouldn't have been able to pick us up. I'm gonna play those right now and see if we can't hear them. I hope you guys can because they were cool. Footsteps, here we are. Can you hear the whispers?
Mhm. I can hear the footsteps too.
Yeah.
Is that's the footsteps, those loud bangs?
Yeah.
So it's not like this subtle like thing in the background. It's
No,
like
no, no.
somebody
it's-
stomping around.
You hear the you hear the footsteps. You hear the wood cracking.
Yeah,
I'm gonna
yeah.
put those in. so you can hear.
Yeah, I'm gonna listen actually to a thing I recorded to see how.
And then the second set of footsteps. This recorder was in this room.
At the same time, same event.
Yeah, cool.
Wow.
Cool. And okay, so I'll talk about some of the stuff that I've done. I'll play a video. I'll tell you the story behind it. I live all the way up on the top of Manhattan, and I live in a building that is part of like a complex. It's 4 different buildings,
Mhm.
and we have a courtyard. And every year around this time of the year, there's an article or something, and that might have a picture of me in it, and about ghosts and ghosts of New York, and so let's see, Jenny, the very first day. Okay, so I was walking into my building one day, and this neighbor of mine who lived up on the 5th floor, she came up to me, and I'd seen her and her boyfriend, who was a fiance, and I'd seen them around and just said hi. But it's New York, you don't really make too good of friends with your neighbors, but I had noticed them, and I was walking through the courtyard going to my building, and she said, "Hey," I said, "Hey." She goes, "Can I ask you a question?" And I said, "Yeah, sure." She goes, "You're a ghost guy?" I said, "Yeah, I am." She goes, "I saw you in the paper." She goes, "My apartment's haunted."
Mhm.
And I said, "Oh, it is? And it's in my building. What a great investigation." And I said, "Really?" She goes, "Yeah, my neighbors heard something." She was friends with her neighbor who lived across the hall from her. And she goes, "Would you come up and check it out?" And I was like, "Yeah, sure." I went up, and she told me that she would hear plates rattling in the kitchen, and she always got the feeling that somebody was looking at her, and all these creepy feelings. And it turns out that her and her fiance had broken up about a month previous, and he was cheating on her, and he moved to Texas and opened up a restaurant, which is the life that she wanted.
Aw.
But he like blew her off and moved to Texas, and he's having this great life with this Jezebel. And so that was going on in her life. All right, well, let's go. Let's do like a little mini investigation. I grabbed some stuff, and I went up the stairs, and we just set a camera up. She said she thought she might see faces or somebody looking in the window from her, in through her kitchen window. And her apartment in the building is in the same line as mine, so her apartment and my apartment matched. It's a big window. It's on the 5th floor. There's no fire escape on that window, so it's not like you could climb up anything and look. And it's the 5th floor. If anybody had a ladder, it'd have to be a really gigantic ladder. So I went up there, set some stuff up, and I'm going to share my screen and play you this video. Share. Teapot AVI. Okay, so I'm going to pause it. You guys can see my little mouse cursor here moving around. So here's this big kitchen window. Here's some dishes by her sink here, stove, teapot, and right here is my, it's a tri-field natural EMF meter. And what it does is it measures fluctuations in the electromagnetic field and the natural electromagnetic field. So it's filtering out, for the most part, any man-made electromagnetic fields, AC current. It's only taking DC direct current, which is what people give off, and what thunderstorms, the geomagnetic field. Lee, am I right here?
Yeah,
Yeah,
there's DC and AC. Yeah.
Right. Okay, sorry.
Yeah.
And you're busy over there.
He's
And-
preoccupied.
And Anyway, so they shouldn't really go off unless somebody is waving their hand over it. I'll play you a cool EVP later on, a nice audio recording of one of these going off on command. But keep an eye on the teapot here. Yeah. So that
That's
was
creepy.
happening. The EMF meter was going off. You can hear it was really windy that night. You hear
Yeah.
a plane going over, and you can actually see the kitchen window kind of flexing in the wind. So I can't remember if there was a thunderstorm going by, but that could be affecting the EMF meter. The magnetic field around that could be changing because of the storm. Now we were in her neighbor's apartment, letting this kind of stuff run. And we actually heard that. She said, see, things are moving. She would get up and like her pots and pans would be on the floor. Now I looked for mouse droppings or any kind of rodent issue that might be pushing a teapot around, and couldn't find anything. So they had a very clean apartment, and this was just moving around. I'm gonna play it again because it's a cool video.
The teapot looks like it's being moved like this. It's not being blown.
Yeah.
It's not random movement.
Yeah.
It's like someone picked it up and moved it around.
Yeah. You hear that plane going over. Yeah. Now, the reason why I dig that so much, it's a great example, I believe, in, let's see, I'm going to stop share. Stop share. It's a great example of, I know, Donata, wow, you're right, you're 100% right. I think it's a great example of poltergeist activity, or current spontaneous psychokinesis. And what that is when somebody isn't able to express any kind of frustration or express their feelings outwardly, it happens to material objects around them, or electronics, or lights can flash on and off. It's almost like a mental temper tantrum where somebody can't express what they're going through for whatever reason. And it happens in other ways. Now that, coupled with the fact that her fiance had just left her. She was looking to move. She couldn't afford the rent. You know, she had two people. They were all pitching in for the rent. Now she was having to dole it out on her own. And what the kicker was for me was they were baristas, and they worked at a coffee shop. And that was a teapot that was moving across the thing. So I told her, I said, I think it probably has more to do with you than any kind of ghosts that are haunting you. It just, everything is lining up too perfectly. It's soon after your fiance blew you off and is having this great life, and you guys were baristas, and now you have a teapot sliding across your stove.
We're rubbing all this in to see if something else happened.
Yeah.
You know, he must be having the best life. What do you think about that?
I know, the funny thing is too, is I went home with the teapot. She was like, well, you know what, you can keep it. And I had it for years and years and years.
Now, what about the feeling of being watched though? Because I've experienced that, and it's extremely disconcerting.
Yeah.
You know, and it's not just like, and when I feel it, and when I feel it here, it's sort of, it's spontaneous, and then it goes away. It's not a constant feeling of being watched. It's almost as if someone has entered a room and is looking at me, and I can't see them, and then they leave because the feeling ends.
Yeah.
What's that all about?
You know, as far as like scientific studies on it, like the closest thing that I know of, and there might be plenty of other ones, but the closest thing that I know of is there's this guy Rupert Sheldrake, that he's kind of like a PSI researcher or whatever. So he tries to investigate these. So he did experiments with people behind like a two-way mirror, and just saw if like people sitting within this room across from the two-way mirror could know whether the people behind it were either staring at them or not. just to see if that feeling could somehow transcend.
And
And the place where I read about it was in one of his books, and the data wasn't presented that well, but apparently the results are statistically significant to some extent.
that
So,
that they did feel.
yeah, so it's worth looking into, but
Yeah.
I'm not certain. In the paper, like the way it was presented was a little foggy, but that's, if nothing else, it's a nice way to like think about for the audience, like, hey, like there are ways to answer this question, right? Like you can design experiments and actually conduct these, and if you're interested in it,
Mhm.
even if his results were significant, try it yourself. Do set up your own experiment. It's not the hardest thing in the world. You get a two-way mirror, like you can,
Right.
not too expensive.
Well, I think everybody's experienced too,
Yeah.
the feeling of somebody staring at you.
Yeah,
Yeah.
You know when
And
somebody's
it's actually
Yes.
creepy. Sometimes I'm just walking along and like I'll just like look up from a book I'm reading or something and like look at somebody. And right then they like turn and look at me. I'm like, I wasn't like, I just happened to like
Yeah,
look
sure.
up at you.
Yeah, sure.
Right,
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's interesting how rapidly that thing can happen sometimes. And maybe it's just coincidence, but yeah, it's interesting enough to try to conduct an experiment on and get some interesting data on it.
There was a gentleman, and I think he's passed away within the last year or two. His name was Michael Persinger, and he was a scientist in Ontario, Canada, and he did a lot of research with electromagnetic fields, and he had what he called the God helmet or the God cap or God
Oh,
hat or
I've
something
heard
like
of
that.
this, I think.
And he would put people in a room, a controlled environment, and put this cap on him, and it was like a shower cap with electrodes on it, and he could control electromagnetic fields where they would be presented on the brain, and people were experiencing many things, and it really all depended on where that person's kind of belief system was. And some people would have a religious experience.
Mhm.
Some people would have an out-of-body experience. And some people had alien abduction experiences where they felt like they were floating
I
out of a
can't go
room.
there. That's one place I just
Right?
can't
And then
go.
other people
Alien
felt that there was a presence in the
Mhm,
room.
mhm.
Some, like I said, some people
Yeah.
thought it was a religious presence, but some people thought it was like a haunting presence. Now, it turns out, it's a theory that I believe in as well, that people who have a hypersensitivity to electromagnetic fields all seem to report a feeling of being watched and an uneasy feeling. And it's doing investigations at private homes. People will always say, when I'm laying in bed, I feel like somebody's watching me. And back in the day before cell phones, everybody had a clock radio
Yeah.
on their nightstand next to their bed. Now, for whatever reason, clock radios, the EMF was always through the roof
Mhm.
on these. If I came into the merchant's house with my EMF meter, this light might give off like a 0.2 milligauss, and clock radios would give off like 70, 80, over 100 sometimes. So I would tell people, move your clock radio and change your bed around, and the haunting would stop.
Hmm.
So I said, some people are a little hypersensitive to it, and some people aren't. I don't think I am, because I can sit next to a breaker panel and not
Yeah.
have any kind of feelings, and then some people just would get freaked out.
Yeah, you don't strike me as the kind of person who gets afraid. So I get afraid.
Yeah.
I feel afraid,
Yeah.
but you don't strike me as that kind of
I've been
person.
startled, but you're afraid of things that you don't understand. And I'm not saying that I understand all this, I'm not an expert. There's no expert. There's a couple experts, but I'm certainly not an expert in this stuff. But I've been startled, but I feel I have a pretty good understanding of that I'm not in any kind of danger.
Mhm.
I don't believe that I'm going to be possessed. I don't believe I walk into places where they say there's demons. I say, if anybody wants to possess me, go ahead. Come on. I'm good with it, and nothing ever happens. So I'm not afraid. I'm not scared, but I've been startled. Doors have slammed in my face. I've been
Yeah.
touched and poked,
Mhm.
and so yeah, I've been startled.
What was your most startling experience?
It wasn't a haunting, but I was spending the night in an embalming room, as you do.
Ah,
And somebody had set up a tape recorder on the table, the stainless steel table. And we were in there, and the tape was rolling, and we're asking questions. And it's probably like a 45-minute tape, 90-minute tape, 45 minutes on each side. And when the tape would run out, the buttons pop out.
mhm.
Well, the button popped out and hit the table, and then fell like the way the tape recorder was situated on the table. It fell over. It scared the crap out of me. And I still have the recording of me like yelping like a wounded puppy. And it scared the hell out of me. And as soon as we figured out, instant, we
Yeah.
figured
Well,
out.
was
oh,
there,
that.
was there a decedent in the room?
No.
Okay.
It was an old funeral parlor that a gentleman had bought and redid it, but they had left a lot of the stuff of the funeral parlor there. So we incorporated that into his house. And but he kept the embalming room the way it was. And it was pretty creepy. He was a wacky guy, living in an old
Embalming.
he had all the bottles. He had it behind the bar. All the embalming bottles were part of his bar. Weird, creepy.
So, one thing along the lines of what you mentioned, Attila, of like, you might have a different reaction because you get scared about certain things. I mean, that's one point that I'll tie in later. But the other thing is, Dan, like you mentioned the Persinger study, and this is like an example that I mentioned on a previous show too, which is like a lot of times there might be some weird stuff, possibly PSI for people that are watching you look up, and like people do some experiments. I think it exists. And then somebody does an experiment, they're like, oh, look, like we can cause this effect by doing this, stimulating your brain with electromagnetic fields, and then it has the same effect. And therefore, all these effects are due to you sleeping next to a badly built alarm clock, right? So, and then that generally just kind of gains acceptance throughout science. And like anytime you talk to scientists about it, they'll be like, oh yeah, but like Persinger was able to replicate it with this study. But if you actually look into it, and this pattern happens a lot, those kinds of studies, when you look at replications of them, which is like the core of science and why, the whole way that things are proven, like nobody was really able to ever replicate a study. People actually did attempt to, and they got, very, very mixed results. Most people weren't able to get any real effects. So the effects that they did find, or not actually an effect, but when they did find people actually reporting stuff, they found that it wasn't actually correlated with when they had the real stimulation on versus the sham helmet on, that didn't actually send stimulation. So, you have to be careful about this stuff, because like once that study comes out, then like everybody in science is like, oh, good, now we have an explanation for this and
Everything, right?
Yeah, alarm clocks, yeah. And then even people within the field too, it's like, oh yeah, it's proven by that. But it's that study is pretty shaky, even the way in which he conducted it. But just because he purportedly showed like a negative to like, oh, there actually are spirits around, like it, even though he did that study badly, it just gained widespread acceptance in science, like, oh, case closed.
Right.
So it's something to watch out for on both sides.
Yeah.
So
I mean, it's not saying that, spirits don't exist. It's just not every feeling you have is because of a spirit.
Exactly.
Right.
But that's what he was trying to say. But when you actually look at his study and the replications of it, like they don't even say that, right? It's like that doesn't seem to be a thing,
Right.
So it's the water is kind of muddy,
Yeah.
and you just kind of really have to dig into it. And the best thing, like I said, is conduct your own experiments and think about how to do it and do it.
And we were talking about that EMF meter, and I'm going to play you this. This was at the merchant's house, and this is the EMF meter. Now these EMF meters are a little pricey, and I had quite a few of these things, and nothing ever, it never went off. And I was like, oh man, I just wasted all this money. And then the first time it started going off was here at the merchant's house, and so I've had good luck. Just the other night, I did an investigation here, and it was going off.
Nice.
And
which the natural?
yeah, the natural was going off up in the servants' quarters, and then didn't do it the rest of the night.
Nice.
And no storms, and interesting. But I'm going to play you this. This is and I love this for a bunch of different reasons. The main reason, you'll hear my friend Garrett, who's no longer with us, but you hear us giggling, laughing like little schoolgirls, and I miss Garrett, so it's cool hearing his voice, hearing him laugh. But it's me and he and I at about 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning here at the merchant's house, and we're asking any kind of spirits to wave their hand over our EMF meter, which is a little blue box. And you'll hear me say the words "little blue box."
And this was downstairs in the
This
parlor,
was downstairs in the rear parlor.
Yeah.
So
which you'll see on the ghost tour, I guess, right?
Yep.
All right, I'm just gonna ask you one more thing. If you are in this room, and I think we all have a feeling you might be, and there's a little blue box sitting on the windowsill over in the corner of the room. If you approach that little blue box and wave your hand over it or touch that blue box, it'll buzz, and we'll know that you're here. So if you just go over and just just touch that little blue box or wave your hand over it 3 times right in a row, that would be amazing, and we'd really appreciate it. So, all right, I'll shut up now.
Garrett will tell him, doing this to me.
That was great. Thank you very much.
That's crazy.
Wow, man, you know what? Can you touch it one more time, really, really quick? Just touch it. Just tap it once. Thank you very much. Wow,
That's great.
So the
Yeah.
awesome thing about that is, like, if you had the device with you, like the audio that was coming out of the device
Uh-huh.
is exactly what happens when you physically move your hand, wave
Yeah.
your hand over the top of it, and then if you were to tap it like that, it happens exactly like that.
Yep.
So it starts kind of,
Yeah.
as your hand gets
Like a
closer.
theremin.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah. So that's crazy.
Yeah, that's what happened Wednesday night when we were upstairs, and when we do an EVP session, I always say, anybody that's connected with me, not just the treadwells or the servants, anybody can
Yeah.
come by and say hi and let us know that you're here. My family and, the 2 girls that were on the investigation with me opened themselves up to, for their family or friends. And one of the girls had a friend, I guess I could say his name. I think his name was Douglas. And she said, Doug, and if you're around, and that's when the EMF meter went just like that,
Oh.
like
Yeah.
that. And it didn't do it any other time, only when she said Douglas.
Wow.
And now, does that mean that there's a spirit in there waving their hand over it? I don't think so. It could be some kind of intentional PK. The energy from Garrett and I, hoping that it goes off on command.
Maybe. I don't know.
Maybe,
I
but
mean,
I'm just saying that that's not definitive proof.
it seems pretty definitive to me. You say, touch it one more time. and
As a
then it makes
scientist,
it-
would that hold up for you?
Yeah, I mean, they're
Yeah.
both equally absurd and likely possibilities, right? It's like they're both equally supported by science. Like,
Right.
Right.
Neither of these things are known to exist. So
Yeah, like in a
either
court of
one-
law, you would win, but for
Yeah.
science, for some reason, it's
Yeah.
people are, as they should be.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
especially, like you said it was Richard that you're with, or who was the?
Garrett.
Oh, with Garrett, yeah. So I mean, especially because Garrett is, purportedly kind of like in this realm in between realms. Like, if anybody was to be able to do that kind of thing with their own minds, even subconsciously,
Right.
it would be somebody like him, I guess. So,
I've got another video I'm gonna play. And then we're gonna get to Lee's got something he wants to show us. I'm gonna share my screen again, share. And, okay, so this is this gentleman here, his name is Ray Setti. He is a psychic medium from New Jersey. He's holding a recorder here. And this is Gordon Ward. He is a paranormal investigator and a musician who is nominated for a Grammy. He's been nominated for a Grammy. He's a folk singer.
Yeah.
Both great guys. Love them both. This is years ago. We were up in the servants' quarters, and they were conducting an EVP experiment up there. I wasn't up there. And they were talking about if this recorder had audio recording, and you're going to hear a loud bang. When we're doing an EVP session, if you hear any kind of strange noises, either outside or in the house, or somebody, stomachs growling or whatever, you call it out. And these guys are seasoned investigators. They would absolutely call something out. Now, also, I want you to see what could be an orb right here, and not a dust orb, but an orb sort of emitting its own light.
Mhm.
But watch these guys. You hear this big giant noise, and they don't blink an eye.
Russian, it would be Russian.
Yeah, see, they don't see anything. And then you see that bright light, and people send me
Oh, yeah.
videos. Oh, look at that. I hit it right on the money. People send me videos all the time of orbs going, this is an orb, this is an orb. And I go, that's a dust, that's a piece of dust, that's a bug. But I don't know what that is. It could be just a reflection. Now, they were using night vision. It could be a reflection or a lens flare off of this light right here, which wasn't on, but I don't know. What's interesting to me is that they don't acknowledge that loud bang.
I don't
Right.
know, I feel like maybe that's why he asked if it had audio, because he wanted.
No,
to
they were,
record it.
I know, I should have made the clip a little bit longer, but they were talking
Totally
about,
irrelevant.
yeah, I know, it sounds like, I cut it there on purpose. But they were talking about, Ray had, the medium had sort of made a connection with a young girl up in the servants' quarters.
Mm.
And they were asking questions, and Gordon was asking is this recording our questions?
Right.
But yeah, interesting that these guys don't acknowledge that loud bang.
And that's, it's kind of, it makes you think like, how often does this kind of stuff happen in your everyday life? Which, if spirits do exist, maybe caused by spirit, then you just kind of push it to the side, like, oh, I don't know what that is.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's exactly right.
Especially in New York, where
Right.
loud noises happen all the time.
Right, right. Well, remember when Lisette was doing the show with us and we were down in the parlor and
Yeah.
Lisette and I heard that really loud door slam and you guys just didn't hear it.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, I've recorded things here that, we'll have 4 recorders rolling, and it only comes off on 1 recorder.
Mhm.
And which, I'm sure that there are ways to explain why that would happen, but you have to check things off your paranormal investigator checklist going, all right, I'm in a haunted house. People have had this experience before, and going down the line, and these reporters aren't faulty, and it leaves you with either, all right, maybe that was some kind of place memory type of noise that energy was just released here at the house at that moment. And we were lucky enough to catch it on the recorders. Now, those 2 recorders that the guys were holding, you didn't hear that on their recorders.
Really?
Ah,
Yeah.
interesting.
Huh.
So, all right, now we have not a lot of time left, but we started a little bit late.
Yeah.
We have Dr. Lee has an amazing guy, and he has been creating equipment here for the Merchant's House, and he's going to show us, if you ever come to the Merchant's House, he's going to show us what you might be able to do at home to create a little EMF meter. Is that an EMF meter?
I just brought a bunch of sensors. I mean, the idea is we're thinking in the future of having like a little class where we just teach people general electronics and how to build their own sensors and stuff. So it's just kind of like a preview of that, and just to show some of the electronics that I've built in the past, some of which I don't use anymore, some of which I do. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
How do we want to work this?
I can just hand them to you guys.
Okay, yeah,
And you guys can pick up whatever you find most interesting, and I can just talk about them.
Mhm.
So this right here is just an example of actually the one on the table
Mhm.
is an example of just taking an off-the-shelf sensor
Right.
and modifying it so that you can actually collect data in sort of like a quote unquote more scientific way.
Mhm.
So like if you flip that around, like on the inside, so I've just basically soldered on my own wires to the inside of this that are connected to some of the circuitry in here. So that basically lets you
There you go.
it lets you read out data that this thing is normally when you have it on, you walk around with it, it bleeps and bloops, and like that's cool, and you might capture that on camera. But if you want to have that data recorded maybe across a bunch of these so that all at the same time you can correlate between them,
Mhm.
and basically just have that data recorded in a way that's not just in video, that you can analyze more easily in terms of like which goes off first, where they go off, everything. You can, one way you can do that is modify these circuits by breaking out wires that you can send to your own little computer to record that data in a more replicable way. So that's an example of just modifying off the shelf sensor. This is an example of a little sensor that I
Hold it
built.
by this?
Yeah, you can hold it like that. Yeah. So that's actually a little antenna. So that's just the PCB that I designed to put my own sensors all onto one board. And actually that board is just half populated. So there's 2 other sensors that aren't on there. But the idea is to have, if possible, like as many sensors in one sort of little piece as possible, and make a grid of those that you can collect data from a whole bunch of, because we still don't really, we haven't fully ironed out like which sensors work when and why. We have examples like Dan's excellent example and other examples of individual sensors working sometimes, but then sometimes they don't seem to, or there's a lot of background noise because of, thunderstorms or whatever. So it's good to incorporate as many sensors as you can into these studies. That's an attempt at doing that. This sensor that Matilda's holding out, so that's sensor. You'll actually see a grid of those sensors in the room behind us, actually in the study.
Right, if you come,
Yeah,
which you
if you
should.
come, yeah. And you'll actually see during the ghost tour how these sensors can be activated. So basically, it's a capacitive sensor. So it's reacts to changes in capacitance around that orange antenna that's sticking off the side, and the LEDs light up. So sometimes, I described with this sensor how to record that data to a computer, but sometimes that's difficult, right? You don't want extension cords going all over the place. So sometimes it is actually easier to just like have a bunch of sensors that have all their data recorded on a video, So that's that sensor that you were just holding up, Matilda, is an example of that. So those LEDs on the front light up differently depending on the amount of activation. And right now, the way I was doing studies with that is I would actually just set up a camera watching a grid of those and just have the camera record that instead of having a computer record it. It's just cheaper and easier. That's it's what's called a breadboard. So I just was prototyping a whole bunch of, it's a whole rat's nest of circuits on there, but I was prototyping a bunch of different circuits, and that's actually, those circuits are actually what led up to the final design of this white circuit.
Okay.
So I designed a bunch of circuits with these little wires, stuck them in there, found stuff that worked, and then I designed on a electronics CAD program the PCB, and then ordered that to be manufactured. So those might be classes that we teach in the future, just the whole gamut of like how to build stuff in that messy way,
Sure.
get it to work, and then like you design a more official way, you get it manufactured, and then you can solder your own pieces onto it. They're just useful tools to be able to do your own experiments, like we were talking about.
Yeah, and that's cool, because for so long, people buy these, gadgets and these devices, and now they're downloading apps,
Yeah.
and going trying to collect EVP with these apps, and it's all, you see them on the TV shows, and they're really, really cool. And I love the TV shows. I watch the shows, and
You're on the
I'm
show.
on one of those. Which is, oddly enough, it's the only one I really haven't watched. And I watched it once and I wasn't on. But people see these kind of gadgets, and they go and they think that this is made for ghost hunting, and it's not. It's an EMF meter is not
some
made.
of them, well, yeah, so the caveat to that is some of them are, but those are actually a lot of times the ones that distrust the most.
Yeah.
Because like there are some, the way that you're going to sell something is if you get really cool stuff happening with it. So
Right.
there are devices that you'll see on these ghost hunting shows that they light up in weird ways, and like they'll be like, oh my God, something must have just walked by, and like, why didn't any of these other sensors go off, but that special one did? When we actually look into it, like if they had read the manual of that sensor, they'd realize that like every 15 minutes it recalibrates itself.
Yeah.
And by doing that, it like flashes all the lights twice, and that's
Right.
exactly what they just saw, right?
Yep.
So it's like, it's like you're saying, Dan, it can be frustrating to see that and see people using things incorrectly, or just not realize what they're using, or see them using products that deliberately are misleading people by
Right.
lighting up in weird ways that
Or like laser grids. I know a lot of
Yeah.
people are using laser grids now, and and if something breaks the laser, I'm like, well, spirits don't have mass, they don't have a body.
Yeah.
What are you expecting to see break
Yeah.
the laser? And
Yeah.
or now they're using these the video game cameras, and using that, and they're getting stick figures. But if you read how they work,
yeah.
it's doing exactly what it's supposed to be doing. It's looking for
Yeah.
anything that they could turn into a stick figure.
Yeah.
And then when you plug the program in, if you're playing some video game, it's going to dress that stick figure
Exactly.
appropriately to the game.
If this camera that is being used right now was that, it would actually probably be projecting a stick figure onto the bed
on this,
poles.
yeah,
Exactly.
yeah.
You see it a vertical.
When you watch those
line,
videos,
you see
watch
the
the
horizontal
torso
line.
never
Exactly.
moves.
Yeah.
With the arms and
It's
legs.
usually aligned with some vertical thing. So it's just, this is all about just being able to build your own sensors, understanding sensors you have better, being able to modify the ones that you have to better suit your needs, and just in general, improve the science that's being done with this stuff and help people do their own experiments. Yeah.
We have a question, was how old was the girl that the two guys were in contact with? Ray said, Gordon wasn't in contact with the girl.
Who is this even about? What's this?
The two guys that had the
Oh,
video,
okay,
he was
okay.
being talked to a young girl. And he said it was a young girl. I don't remember the age, but under 10. So yeah, that's the answer to your question, Dan. And look at this, now it's 7:34. This hour went by really, really fast. And so we're gonna have to wrap it up.
Yeah,
'Cause I gotta go home and go to bed.
yeah, me too.
And I'm shot. And you guys have to go to bed and or get online to get on the waiting list for one of these ghost tours,
Yes.
which are unfortunately sold out. But hopefully some of you guys that are watching this show will be on the tours. I'll be giving the tours at 10:30 on Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday.
Mhm.
And you'll be there with we'll be together on Thursday, right? All right.
Thursday.
Yeah.
And
But also just the way things are happening recently, basically any tour in the future might end up being a ghost tour.
Yeah,
You know,
come
you
to
might
the
see
house.
something in the mirror, you might feel something tap on your shoulder. You know,
Yeah.
they're picking up.
yeah.
All right.
Yeah, and come on Sunday to the wake. I'll be there dressed as Bridget Murphy.
Are you?
I'll be letting you
That's
into the
awesome.
house. And if you come in costume, I'll take your picture. You're welcome to take pictures throughout the house if you're in costume. That'd be really fun to post on your Instagram, or you could make a TikTok, right?
I was the preacher one year.
You were?
I was, yeah. You should have seen me, man. Fire and brimstone. Pounded.
I bet, yeah.
So, again, guys, stop by the house, come by, visit, and take a tour. And let's see, any more questions here? Thank you. This was very interesting. Lots of good stuff. Oh, thank you, guys. Ghost tours are sold out. Awesome. Yep. So, but come by. Don't let that stop you. Stick your head in here. Help out the Merchant's House when you can. And if you see any of us, say hi. You won't know if you see Lee. He might
That's
be
right.
watching about. You don't
He's the
know.
true
Or if you
ghost,
see me, you won't
actually.
know.
You are a ghost.
Actually, you have no proof that he's not a ghost.
Who's not a
I
ghost?
wave my hand in front of the
Lee,
camera.
well, I'm saying to our audience has no.
I didn't see.
Yeah, right.
All right, guys, we're gonna cut this this show, and we'll be back next month.
Mhm.
And maybe we'll do a part 2 favorite haunts, because I had a bunch of stuff I wanted to get to and we didn't, because we just
Yeah, and maybe I'll do some research and find, since I don't have an experience, the scariest experience I can find.
All right, cool. Yeah, that'll be fun. All right, guys, thank you, everybody, and check out the Merchant's House and have a great, safe Halloween.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks, everybody. So long.
Bye.
Bye.